Ever walked past someone on the street? Someone so quiet and unassuming you barely notice them. What if that person was a living legend, a ghost, a man who has walked through the fire and come out the other side? This is the story of such a man, and the day his carefully constructed, quiet life was shattered by a single, foolish act. Our story begins in a small, dusty town in the middle of nowhere, a place where everyone knows everyone, and outsiders are rare. In this town lived a man named John. To everyone who knew him, John was just there. He ran the local hardware store, a quiet man with a polite smile and eyes that seemed to hold a deep, unspoken history. He was always helpful, always calm, never raising his voice. He was the kind of man you'd ask for help fixing a leaky faucet, not the kind you'd ever associate with trouble. He was in his late 40s, fit, but not in a showy way, with a stillness about him that was almost unnerving if you paid close enough attention. Most people didn't. They just saw John, the quiet hardware store owner. But every town has its shadows. And in this one, the shadow was cast by a man named Rex. Rex was the opposite of John in every way. Loud, arrogant, and built like a brick house. He made his living through intimidation and small-time hustles. He saw kindness as weakness and quietness as fear. Rex and his crew of hangers-on were the town's unofficial problem, a constant source of low-level dread. Everyone knew to just stay out of his way, give him a wide berth, don't make eye contact, and hope he doesn't notice you. One sweltering afternoon, John was closing up his shop. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He was looking forward to a quiet evening, maybe reading a book, enjoying the peace he had worked so hard to find. As he locked the front door, a black pickup truck screeched to a halt in front of the store. Rex and two of his buddies stumbled out, reeking of cheap beer and bad intentions. "Hey, Johnny boy," Rex slurred, a nasty grin spreading across his face. "Heard you did pretty well this week. Maybe you ought to share some of that profit with folks who really need it. You know, for community protection." John didn't react. He simply stood there, keys in hand, his face a calm, unreadable mask. "I don't want any trouble, Rex," he said, his voice even and low. "Just go on home." This calm refusal was like a red flag to a bull for Rex. He was used to people cowering, stammering, or immediately reaching for their wallets. This quiet defiance enraged him. He stepped closer, puffing out his chest, trying to use his sheer size to intimidate John. "What's that? You don't want trouble?" Rex laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Well, trouble found you." He shoved John hard against the store's brick wall. The impact was solid, but John barely seemed to move, absorbing the force with an unnatural stillness. He just looked at Rex, his eyes steady. "This is your last chance to walk away," John said. And for the first time, there was a different quality to his voice, a razor's edge of warning, so sharp and cold, it should have stopped any man in his tracks. But Rex wasn't just any man. He was a fool blinded by ego. He saw John's lack of panic, not as control, but as weakness. He bowled his meaty hand into a fist and swung a clumsy, powerful haymaker right at John's face. And that's when the world shifted. The punch that should have laid John out cold never landed. In a movement so fast it was almost a blur, John's hand came up, not to block, but to intercept. He caught Rex's fist mid-air. The crack of bone was sickeningly loud in the quiet evening air. Rex screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and agony, as he stared at his now broken hand. Before Rex's two friends could even process what had happened, John moved. He wasn't the quiet hardware store owner anymore. He was something else entirely. Something precise, efficient, and terrifyingly competent. He spun on the ball of his foot, using Rex's own momentum to throw him into his first friend. As they stumbled together, a perfectly placed sidekick from John sent the second friend crashing into a stack of empty crates. It was over in less than 5 seconds. 2 men were on the ground, groaning in pain, and Rex was on his knees, cradling his shattered hand. His face, a mask of disbelief and pure terror. He was looking at John, not as the town pushover, but as if he were seeing a monster. John stood over them, not even breathing hard. His calm was back, but it was different now. It wasn't the peace of a simple man. It was the chilling calm of a predator, who had just reminded the world what it was. He looked down at Rex, his eyes like chips of ice. "I told you to walk away," he said, his voice still quiet, but now it carried the weight of 100 battles. The town sheriff, a good man named Dave, arrived a few minutes later. Drawn by the commotion, he saw Rex and his crew, beaten and broken, and John standing there, looking like he had just been tending his garden. Dave had known John for years. He'd always felt there was more to him than met the eye, a certain economy of movement, a way of observing everything without seeming to. Now he was sure of it. As he was cuffing a whimpering Rex, Dave looked at John. "You all right, John?" John just nodded. "They'll need a doctor. Especially him," he said, gesturing to Rex's hand. Later that night, back at the station, Sheriff Dave ran John A.'s name through a federal database he wasn't really supposed to have access to. He had a friend in a high place, a favor to call in. He just had to know. The initial search came up with almost nothing. John Doe. Born, lived, paid taxes. A digital ghost. But Dave's friend dug deeper, pulling on threads that were buried under layers of classified clearance. An hour later, Dave's personal cell phone rang. The voice on the other end was clipped and professional. "Sheriff, about your inquiry. You need to forget that name. The file you're trying to access doesn't exist. The man you're asking about doesn't exist. Are we clear?" Dave understood perfectly. There was only one type of person who got that level of protection, that level of erasure. The elite of the elite. The men who operate in the shadows. The tip of the spear. John wasn't just a retired soldier. The file that didn't exist would have told a story of a man who was a legend in a world that does not allow for legends. It would have told of a man who was a founding member of the U.S. Army's 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. Delta Force, the best of the best. A man who had conducted missions in every hellhole on the planet. A man whose real name was known only to a handful of people. A man who had retired, seeking only one thing: peace. The next day, word spread through the town like wildfire. The story was twisted and exaggerated, as stories often are. But the core truth remained. Rex, the town bully, had picked a fight with the quiet man from the hardware store, and he had been dismantled. Rex and his friends left town as soon as they were released. They didn't look back. The town's low-level dread lifted overnight. A new kind of respect settled over the community, a respect for the quiet man in the hardware store. People still treated him the same. They still asked for help with their faucets. But now, when they looked at him, they saw something more. They saw a protector. They saw a quiet strength that had been there all along, waiting. John never spoke of it. He went back to his life, running his store, offering polite smiles. But things had changed. The peace he had found was now secured, not just by his anonymity, but by the understanding of the community he had chosen to call home. They knew they were safe, because the quietest man in their town was, in fact, the most dangerous man for 100 miles in any direction. And so, the legend of the Delta Force operator, who just wanted to be a hardware store owner, became a quiet part of the town's folklore. A reminder that you never ever know who you're dealing with, and that the quietest people often have the loudest histories. It's a lesson in humility, a testament to the fact that true strength doesn't need to be loud or arrogant. It just is. Thanks for watching our story today. If you enjoyed it, please remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another one. We love bringing these stories to you, and your support makes it all possible. Until next time, stay safe and be good to each other. You never know who you might meet